All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're talking about something we all experience every single day, human settlements. We're going to unpack the hidden patterns and the story behind why our towns, our villages, and our massive cities are built the way they are. It's going to be fascinating.
I mean, seriously, have you ever just stopped while walking around your own neighborhood and thought, why is this street here? Why are all the houses packed together on this side of town? Well, believe it or not, none of it is random. There's a story there, and that's exactly what we're going to explore.
So let's start with the basics. What even is a human settlement? Well, at its core, it's really simple. It's just a group of homes where people live and make a living. And that can mean anything from a tiny little hamlet with just a handful of families to a sprawling megacity with millions of people. It's the basic building block of society. So here's our game plan. We'll quickly cover the great divide between rural and urban life. Then we'll zoom into the specific patterns you see in villages, look at the explosive growth of cities in India, and finally get into the official rules for what actually makes a place a city. Okay, let's kick things off with the biggest split there is when it comes to where we live, the countryside versus the city. And, it's not just about size. These are two fundamentally different worlds, shaped by completely different economies, cultures, and ways of life. Let's break that down a bit. In rural areas, life is often directly connected to the land. We're talking farming, fishing, that sort of thing. This usually means smaller communities where people know each other, creating really strong social bonds. On the flip side, urban life is all about industries, services, and opportunities. You generally have a higher standard of living, and you're much more plugged into what's happening globally. In this image, wow, it just captures that tension perfectly, doesn't it? You see these older, historic buildings that feel like they belong to a more rural time, sitting right in the shadow of modern, shiny skyscrapers. This mix of old and new is pretty much the defining feature of cities all over the world today.
Okay, so let's zoom in now from that big picture view. You might think a village is just, a simple bunch of houses, but it turns out even the smallest villages have very distinct patterns. The way they're shaped is influenced by everything from the land itself to the local culture.
Geographers have actually sorted these patterns into four main types. You've got clustered, semi-clustered, hamleted, and dispersed, and each one tells a really unique story about the people living there. First up is the clustered settlement. This is probably the classic image you have in your head of a village, right? A tight bunch of houses all packed together. This usually happens for a good reason. Either everyone wants to be close to the best, most fertile farmland, or historically, huddling together offered protection and security. Then you have semi-clustered settlements. And this is where it gets really interesting, because they're often shaped by social factors. Check out this quote. It says that the dominant community tends to live in the center of the village, while others settle on the outskirts. So the social hierarchy of a place gets literally mapped onto the ground. It's fascinating. And to round it out, we have the last two types. Hamleted settlements are basically villages that have split into different sections, but they all still share the same name. And then you've got dispersed settlements, which is all about isolation. Think of lone houses or tiny hamlets scattered across hills or deep in a forest, shaped entirely by the ruggedness of the terrain. All right, let's shift gears now. We're moving from the quiet patterns of rural life to the absolutely explosive story of urbanization. We're going to look at the incredible transformation of cities in India, which has happened at a scale and speed that's almost hard to wrap your head around.
Just look at these numbers. They're mind-blowing. In 1951, India had only 5 cities with more than 1 million people. Fast forward to 2011, and that number skyrockets to 53, and it's not stopping. By 2031, it's projected there will be 6 megacities, each with over 10 million people. That is an unbelievable amount of change in a human lifetime.
And these maps just make it so clear. On the left, you see 1951, just a few dots here and there. Now, look at the map on the right from 2011. It's lit up like a Christmas tree. The whole country is just covered in these growing urban centers. The visual is just stunning. And behind all that growth is this one, staggering number. By 2011, there were 377 million people living in India's urban areas. Just to give you some perspective, that's more than the entire population of the United States today. And this is a peek into the future. This map shows the projection for 2031, and as you can see, that urban footprint is just going to keep getting bigger and more dominant. It really makes you wonder how all this growth will be managed, right? Now, this right here is the real wow statistic. Get this. India's top 100 cities are home to about 16% of the population, but they generate a whopping 43% of the country's economic output. And they do all that on less than 1% of the land. It just shows you the incredible economic engine that cities really are.
So we've seen this incredible growth, but it raises a super interesting and kind of tricky question. What actually officially makes a place a city? I mean, it sounds simple, but the line between a really big village and a small town can be incredibly fuzzy, and how you draw that line has huge consequences.
And this leads us to what researchers call the gray zone. We're talking about a massive number of people, somewhere between 80 and 140 million, who are living in places that look like towns, feel like towns, and function like towns, but are still officially classified as villages.
So what's the official rulebook? Well, for a place in India to be reclassified as a census town, it has to hit 3 specific benchmarks. First, the population has to be over 5,000. Second, it has to be dense, with over 400 people per square kilometer. And third, more than 75% of the men working have to be doing jobs that are not related to farming.
And this is why that gray zone matters so much. This isn't just about changing a name. As this quote points out, if you suddenly call a village urban, it can lose access to all sorts of rural government programs, and at the same time, people have to start paying urban taxes. These are huge policy decisions that impact millions of real lives. So we're left with this one big, final question to think about. If a place has the people, the density, and the economy of a city, but it's not officially called one, what does that actually mean for the millions of people who call it home? What does it mean for their future, their infrastructure, and their government? It's a question that gets to the very heart of how we understand our rapidly changing world.